What was the biggest culture shock you have experienced within the United States? Gun culture as a hobby. I grew up in a rough neighborhood in Chicago where drive-by shootings were a regular thing back in the day. I thought only criminals and gangbangers used guns. Guns meant bad. It was a shock to discover that normal-ass households in certain parts of the country had an arsenal of guns in their homes as a hobby. Growing up in a hilly, forested area of the U.S., then driving through the flat prairie, farmland of Middle America as a kid with my family, I remember feeling like I was on an alien planet. So flat, so much sky. It was disorienting. Can't wait to give this experience to my kids someday. It's a big, wide, diverse country out there. When my family drove down to Florida one year, we stopped at a Chili's in Georgia. The waitress, incredibly kind woman, said in a thick southern accent, "Well, hey there. Welcome to Chili's. Can I start y'all off with something to drink?" I said I'd have a Long Island iced tea. And she said, "Oh, y'all got accents. You're not from around here." The thought that other people's accents sound normal to them and my normal unaccented voice sounded different had never occurred to me. I'm from Scotland. Moved to the USA 22 years ago. It still amazes me when people say they like my accent and think they don't have one. Yours is American. Mine is Scottish. Everyone has one. I grew up in NJ. Here are two stories. 1. I visited my boyfriend's family in Mississippi. They literally got on their knees and prayed to Jesus to fix their toilet when it broke. A plumber came to fix it and they thanked Jesus. That was weird. They also looked at me like I was a crazy person when I asked where their recycling bin was. Apparently they don't do that in Mississippi? 2. I moved to Connecticut for grad school. I remember going to Home Depot for something and employees kept coming up to me and asking if I needed any help in a really friendly way. I was so confused. It was so different from my typical experiences in stores in NJ where if you need something you have to track down an employee and they'll be really grumpy about it. Now I live near Boston and my store employee interactions are back to what I'm used to. Haha. I visited Birmingham from Rhode Island. Fell off the curb pretty hard. 3 people were helping me up and some lady put her hands on my shoulder and prayed for me. We don't touch strangers in New England. No. It was weird. This was probably 32 years ago, by the way. As an Aussie, how friendly people are. And how much they sound like the movies. I love the USA. NGL. Reading through these comments, I'm really starting to believe that one saying that America isn't really a country. It's just 50 little ones in a trench coat. Coming from New England, I was amazed when I was visiting Mississippi how many people on a sidewalk in a city would slightly alter their path to make eye contact and say something like, "Hi, how y'all doing?" I took a minute to realize people were just being polite. At home, if a stranger starts talking to you when you pass on the sidewalk, they want something from you. Spent much of my life in the NYC metro area and then moved upstate in my late 20s. I was used to having to fight for every little thing. But at least I was able to get everywhere I needed to go on foot or through public transit. Up here, things are a lot slower and more relaxed. But I have to drive to get pretty much anywhere. Another difference was that getting together in NYC means picking a park or a cafe or a bookstore to hang out in. And spending money wasn't a necessity. We almost never hung out at our friends' apartments. Up here, there are only really 2 options: bars and other people's homes. And the former always requires dropping at least $15 on something. Up north, like DC, NYC, and Chicago, my Texan friendliness and politeness was read differently. It was either taken as flirting or with confusion, disdain. First trip to Vermont, I was shocked that people actually yielded to pedestrians at crosswalks. When I moved to the south, I thought it never snowed, so I threw away my winter coats, sweaters, pants, etc. Boy, was in for a shock. I grew up in northern Minnesota. I had 2 black students in my entire high school when I graduated. They both were 3-sport athletes and popular, so everyone got along. At least from my perspective. I joined the military after I graduated, and nearly 75% of my basic training class was black from South Kakalasi, South Carolina. Can we say culture shock? I got called a cracker for the first time after getting into an argument, and all I could do was give a surprised Pikachu face. Lol, I didn't know what it meant, so I couldn't be offended by it. Suffice to say that surprised quite a few people, so they spent the next few weeks trying to figure out what got my goat. We all had a good time. It was definitely a learning experience. I've some lifelong friends now from those days, and I'm glad I had the experience. Louisiana being called sweetie, sugar, hun, baby, etc., all during a simple convenience store transaction that took about a minute total. Texas standing in a lunch line for barbecue and hearing the 2 old-timers in front of me casually talking about $$ers and how good they are at barbecue. For me, it was the shock of how bad the worst parts of the country really were. I was brought up in an isolated rich town in the middle of nowhere. When I kept hearing about how bad Hartford was, I thought folks were racist and making stuff up. So I moved there for a while. The violence, drugs, crime, and corruption was far worse than anything I expected to exist in reality or fantasy. A kid gets murdered under police custody? Barely makes the paper. Police take protection money right outside of establishments in plain sight of everyone, because what are people going to do? Cops walking into fire hydrants while high and getting angry at the intimate objects. Murders every week. A small area with a GTA rate higher than Canada. Not just per capita, total. I remember asking my neighbor's young kid what he wanted to dress up as for Halloween. His response broke my heart. Hell number. I ain't going out, dear. He was right. It's too dangerous to go out at night. Culturally, there was look that outsiders thought was tough that locals had. It wasn't actually a tough look. It was a complete lack of hope. I moved to rural GA after growing up in the burbs of a major northern city. Beyond the accents, I was terribly disappointed about the blatant racism, the open dislike for damn Yankees, and was particularly shocked after a person who had an ultra-right-wing religion called me satanic for being a Catholic. I lived in Pittsburgh for a few years. Also raised in the South. I call everyone ma'am and sir, and got told many times, please don't call me ma'am, for the same reason. It apparently meant I was calling them old. Down here we would get scolded in school for not replying to adults with yes ma'am, no sir. Also, the sweet tea situation up north is depressing outside of Chick-fil-A and McDonald's. I had to go to Dallas for work once. People were just casually, blatantly racist around me. Like me also being white meant I was automatically a racist too. It was disgusting. My parents divorced when I was an infant, and one of my parents relocated to the Deep South. We're from the North. I was told immediately that every reply ends with ma'am or sir. And every adult is Mr. Name. Or Miss Name. Also, boiled peanuts. No offense to any Southerners, but Jesus Christ, boiled peanuts are stomach churning to me. Went to the beach once, my aunt's friend had some, so I tried them. Never again. Never.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. Epicaricast is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.